What would you do if the place you called home turned into a battlefield over a simple fence? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses lined the streets, Emily Harper found herself at war. Not with a neighbor over a borrowed lawnmower or a noisy dog, but with the Karen Heights Homeowners Association, a self-appointed council of busybodies who wielded their rulebook like a guillotine. Emily's crime? A rustic wooden fence she'd built around her backyard, inspired by the sprawling ranches of her Montana childhood. To the HOA, it was an eyesore. To Emily, it was a piece of her soul. Emily had moved to Willow Creek 2 years ago, chasing a quieter life after a decade in Chicago's corporate grind. She was 38, single, and tired of the city's relentless pace. Her modest 2-story home, with its wraparound porch and wildflower garden, was her sanctuary. The fence was her final two-cha nod to her roots, with weathered cedar posts and wire mesh that evoked open plains under endless skies. She'd spent weekends hammering it together, her hands blistered but her heart full. For a moment she felt free. Then the letter arrived. Violation notice. It read, in crisp, accusatory font. The HOA led by Patricia "Patty" Wentworth, a woman with a perm as tight as her grip on power, declared the fence inconsistent with community aesthetics. The fine was $500, with a demand to remove it within 30 days or face escalating penalties. Emily's blood boiled. She'd followed the guidelines, or so she thought. The HOA's rulebook was a labyrinth of vague clauses and contradictory standards, designed to trap the unwary. She tried reasoning with Patty at the next meeting, but the room, packed with homeowners nodding like bobbleheads, drowned her out. Rules are rules, Patty said, her smile sharp as a paper cut. Emily wasn't one to back down. She'd faced worse layoffs, heartbreak, the loss of her father to cancer. If the HOA wanted a fight, she'd give them one. She spent nights poring over local zoning laws, her dining table buried under legal documents and coffee mugs. That's when she met Lucas Tran, a wiry, quick-talking paralegal who lived 3 streets over. Lucas was an unexpected ally, a single dad with a knack for finding loopholes and a grudge against the HOA for fining him over his daughter's lemonade stand. "They're bullies," he said, his dark eyes glinting with mischief. But bullies always overplay their hand. Together, they uncovered a gem. The HOA's clubhouse, a gaudy structure with faux columns and a putting green, sat on a lot zoned ambiguously under county records. A clerical error from decades ago left it vulnerable to reclassification. Emily saw her chance. If the HOA could fine her for her fence, she'd hit them where it hurt their precious clubhouse. With Lucas's help, she filed a petition to rezone the lot as a livestock overflow, a designation meant for rural properties but technically applicable due to the error. It was audacious, absurd, and perfectly legal. The plan wasn't just revenge, it was a statement. Emily wanted the HOA to feel the absurdity of their own rules turned against them. She imagined their faces when they learned their clubhouse could, in theory, house goats and chickens. Lucas laughed until he cried, sketching out mock blueprints for a barnyard. But as the petition moved forward, Emily felt a pang of doubt. Was she becoming the very thing she despised, a petty rulemonger weaponizing bureaucracy? She pushed the thought aside. This was justice, not vengeance. The twist came at the county hearing. Emily expected resistance, maybe a few angry neighbors. Instead, she faced Margaret "Maggie" O'Connell, a soft-spoken widow in her 70s who'd lived in Willow Creek since its founding. Maggie wasn't on the HOA board, but she carried weight, a quiet authority born of years surviving nosy neighbors and changing times. She stood at the podium, her hands trembling but her voice steady, and revealed something no one expected. The clubhouse lot had been her family's land, donated to the community decades ago under the condition it remain a public space. The HOA had twisted its purpose, turning it into an exclusive enclave for their meetings and cocktail parties. Maggie supported Emily's petition not out of spite, but because she believed the HOA had lost its way. The room erupted. Patty's face turned the color of her prized azaleas. Homeowners whispered, some outraged, others intrigued. Maggie's words shifted the narrative. This wasn't just about Emily's fence anymore. It was about a community that had forgotten its roots. Emily felt a surge of gratitude, but also guilt. Maggie's story reminded her of her own father, who'd taught her to fight for what mattered but never to lose sight of kindness. Had she gone too far? The hearing stretched late into the night. Emily and Lucas presented their case with precision, citing zoning codes and historical records. Patty countered with theatrics, waiving the HOA rulebook and warning of anarchy if the petition passed. But Maggie's testimony lingered, a quiet rebuke to the HOA's arrogance. The county board deliberated for days, leaving Emily sleepless and second-guessing herself. Lucas, ever the optimist, kept her grounded. "You're not the villain here," he said, squeezing her hand. "They started this." When the decision came, it was a gut punch. The county approved the rezoning, but with a catch. The clubhouse would remain operational unless the HOA failed to comply with new agricultural regulations. In other words, Emily had won a symbolic victory, but the clubhouse stood. The HOA, humiliated, dropped the fine against her fence. But Patty's parting words were venomous. "You'll regret this, Harper." Emily felt no triumph, only exhaustion. She'd exposed the HOA's flaws. But at what cost? Neighbors who once waved now avoided her gaze. Her sanctuary felt less like home. Months later, the real twist arrived. Maggie invited Emily to her small, cluttered home for tea. Over chipped mugs, Maggie shared stories of Willow Creek's early days, families who'd built it together, flaws and all. She handed Emily a faded photo of the clubhouse's groundbreaking, her late husband smiling in the crowd. "I didn't speak up to hurt anyone," Maggie said. "I just wanted us to remember who we were." Emily realized then that her fight, while justified, had fractured something precious. She'd won the battle but lost the community's trust. In a final act, Emily withdrew her petition. The clubhouse reverted to its original zoning, but the HOA's grip weakened. Patty stepped down, replaced by a younger board member who promised transparency. Emily's fence stayed, a quiet monument to her defiance. But as she sat on her porch, watching fireflies dance in the dusk, she felt no victory. The wildflowers she'd planted wilted under an early frost, and Lucas, her steadfast ally, moved away with his daughter for a fresh start. Emily was alone again, her home a fortress in a neighborhood that no longer felt like hers. The HOA's rules still lingered, a shadow over Willow Creek. Emily had fought for her freedom, but the cost was a bitter pill. She'd exposed the truth, but truth didn't mend fences, literal or otherwise. As she stared at the stars, she wondered if her father would be proud or disappointed. The answer, like so much else, remained out of reach. Yendi.